Welcome back to another episode of Cali Pods. I'm your host, Bryce Haslam, and joining us today will be Elliahna Scheeler, my friend. She's going to talk to us a bit about piano tuning, kind of how she got into it, and how she's built this little business around it. So go ahead and just introduce yourself, Elliahna, and then kind of tell us how you came about learning piano tuning, and then kind of how you turned that passion into a little business you have going on right now.
Okay, so I'm Elliahna. I've been playing piano since I was about 6 years old. My mom put me in lessons. I guess starting then, I didn't really love piano. It took me a long time to really love it, but I kind of, I guess, I started piano lessons with my first teacher when I was like in kindergarten, like I said, and then she stopped teaching me lessons because her back was giving her problems, and so I had to kind of find another teacher. And then I did lessons with her up until probably like my 6th grade year, and she moved away, and so I had to stop taking lessons from her. And then we couldn't really find anybody else in the area who would really give me lessons, and so after that, I kind of just taught myself, and I didn't really actually grow to love it until I, started doing things on my own, started playing my own things, kind of creating some stuff too. And so I guess that's kind of where my love really came in for the piano.
And so I guess when did you go from playing to tuning? Like what kind of made you want to start doing that?
So I knew, like, for my senior project, like thinking about it over the summer, kind of when I was like creating music too, I knew that I wanted to do something that related to music, whether that was just music in general or music with the piano. It didn't really matter. I just knew I wanted to do something in the area. And so, like, thinking about, like, we needed our piano tuned or whatever, and I was like, oh my gosh, I should do that for my senior project. Since they're really hard to come by, piano tuners. We don't really have a lot in our area, and I think I thought it would be a really good skill to learn. So I kind of just made my decision like in the summer, and then kind of just stuck with it until the school year. So
Yeah. And for those of us who don't know, because I know I don't have a clue on how to tune a piano, could you kind of just explain what that process looks like?
right. So I guess it'd be hard to kind of explain without giving really like a good visual, but like the inside of the piano, it goes from lower to higher. There's 7 octaves, and so the lowest octaves have one string. The middler, kind of still lower octaves have 2 strings for each note, and then the higher ones have 3 strings for each note. With tuning, you kind of have to. Okay, so my mentor he gifted me a tuner, like a really old tuner, something that he uses, but he's so good that he can kind of tune by ear now. But I started with a tuner that like specializes just for piano tuning, but like I said, they're pretty old, not super accurate, and they came out recently in probably the past 10-15 years with tuning software. And it does cost money on like how accurate you want the tuning to be, and so I've paid for, I guess, my own software. But anyway, you are going to use, if you don't have perfect pitch, you'll use like your software or your tuner, and you'll like, I guess, use the tool supplied. And like with each, I guess, string, you also have mutes, so you put them in between each string. So with the strings that have, like, let's say the 3 strings for the higher notes, you have to tune each string individually to match, the perfect pitch. So you're putting, I don't know, this is kind of hard to put a visual, but you're putting a mute in between let's say, just like 2 of the strings, and you're tuning that first string, and then you'll make sure that's perfect, and then you'll put it to the other in between the middle and the other outside one, tune the outside one, and then with the middle one, you kind of have to tune by ear, matching kind of that to the other outside too, so that it's perfect.
Okay.
And you can kind of hear it without, like, if it doesn't match, you can hear like a ringing kind of, but it's definitely something that you have to practice, and you've kind of always have to have like an ear for music growing up in that. So
Okay, so it's kind of a combination of like physical tools and then like the digital
for
software.
sure, and lots of practice.
And
Yes,
so you'd say that you kind of use the physical tools to tune it and then use that software to check it and make sure it's done
for sure.
correctly.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, does it vary by piano, like, or are all pianos generally tuned the same?
All pianos are genuinely tuned the same. With an upright piano, I guess it's kind of hard to explain like without a visual, but it is going vertically up and down, whereas a baby grand piano or a full grand piano has it horizontally, so it's laying flat. Um, but I guess the tuning is definitely the same. I guess something that's interesting that I learned was the more that a piano is out of tune, like you know how a guitar strings, like when you tune guitar strings, say you just barely strung your guitar, your
Yeah.
strings are going to want to tend to go flat a lot if you just like freshly strung your guitar. It's the same thing for pianos. So if you hadn't had your piano tuned in say like 15 years, your strings are really flat. And say I came over and just tuned it, in about like 6 months, they're going to tend to want to go flat instead of your usual year
Oh,
of when
okay.
you would usually tune it.
So the longer you put it off, the more often you're gonna have to get it until it's
tuned.
corrected.
Yes, corrected. Yes,
Okay.
for sure.
Well, and so I guess explain this too. Like, how does a piano get out of tune? Is it purely based off time, or are there other factors that kind of lead to that?
So there is like time and temperature. It is recommended that a piano is tuned every 12 months, so every year. But if you haven't had it tuned in say 10, 15 years, you're going to want to, if I tune it, I'm like once, I'm probably going to recommend you have it tuned again in probably 6 months.
Okay.
But, like humidity affects your soundboard in the piano. Um, if you're moving the piano around a lot, that's definitely going to affect the tuning. It's going to make it go flat. And then I guess just your location, I guess like with humidity and um, if it's up against a wall that's say like the temperature is changing all the time, that's definitely going to affect how much it's going out of tune.
Okay.
So
So where we live in like Wyoming and it's drier, and maybe you don't know a lot about this, but I thought I'd ask. Say you did a piano tuning business somewhere where it's more humid and there's a lot more moisture in the air. Would that affect your business at all? Like how often you tune it? Have you thought about that?
I wouldn't say that it would affect too much about tuning, but when there is, so you have a soundboard in the piano and it's made of a specific wood. It used to be made of a different wood, but I think it's made of cedar, I want to say. Don't quote me on that. But when we're in dry areas like this, like in Wyoming, they tend to crack all the time. And so that's one of the big things that's really repaired in our areas is your soundboard, which, takes up the whole piano, will crack and they'll get that repaired. And I'm sure that by the soundboard cracking, it definitely affects the tuning and all the pegs inside of it because they'll move. So
Okay. So that we kind of understand what the how the tuning aspect is. Tell us a bit why you decided to kind of pursue this more than just your senior project and kind of make this into a little business that you have going on.
so I guess when I kind of presented the idea to my parents, they thought that it was a great idea because there were so many, I guess, clients. My mom runs a cosmetology business. She has her own business here in Cali. And she has a lot of older clients, and they would always talk about, needing their pianos tuned. And my mom kind of got the word out that I was tuning pianos. And so already right away, I had a list of so many people who would, be interested. And my mom
Right.
had all their contacts. And so after that, after I had enough practice in, my first piano was Joanne Rasmussen's. She's an English teacher at our school. But I practiced on hers. My first piano took me 4 hours, which is about the time that my mentor's first piano took him, which is kind of crazy. But after that, after I kind of got good and practiced like on my own and on hers and a couple others, I had a bunch of people calling me, texting me, um, talking to my mom about getting an appointment. And I was booking people left and right. And I thought, you know, I might as well be getting paid for this,
Right.
since I'm the only person in the area who's doing this. And so I kind of created a name, created a logo, created a business card. I got my business card printed, and now I leave them in all the pianos I tuned with the date that it's been last tuned, so that they know, hey, it's been a year. And so, yeah, I've been pretty busy since I started.
Yeah, I
So,
bet. How many pianos have you tuned, and how far do you go for that?
so far, I've tuned 23 pianos since the beginning of December up until now. I guess business has slowed down a little bit, but when I started, it was a lot. Um, I scheduled a lot of people. I was constantly, I had to buy a planner because I couldn't keep track of all of the people that wanted theirs done. And with me getting faster at tuning pianos, my first one took me 4 hours. Eventually, it would take me 3 hours, and then eventually
Right.
like 2 hours. And it also depends on how out of tune the pianos are. If they're super out of tune, it could take anywhere from 2 to 3 hours, and if they're just need like their yearly tune, it's usually about an hour and a half. So
Okay, so what would you say like the pros and cons are? Like, what's your favorite parts and your least favorite parts about this business?
I'd have to say my favorite parts are going to meet new people, kind of build connections with them. I like to see why they have their pianos. Do they play it? Why it's important to them. I get to see a little history. I like to go
Yeah.
see like people's houses and why they love music, why they have their pianos. So just client interaction, client communication, building relationships with those people, and also just seeing new pianos uh, and then I guess some cons would be it's definitely hard to manage, I guess, your schedule and keep track of everything without, I guess, having a planner.
Yeah.
And especially when I was in school and things got really busy, and I guess it's not the funnest when I don't have a great client interactions and we don't really connect and
Right.
things like that. So
I guess on the subject of clients, because something I'm kind of curious about is I don't know the thing about pianos, and so I would never think to get my piano tuned. And I'm wondering if most of your customers are already aware of that process, or if any of them were like, "Oh, I had no idea I needed to tune my piano." Like, do you run into that ever?
not usually. Most people know that they need to tune their pianos. They just sometimes will put it off for like 25 years. I've
Oh
had
wow.
a piano that was so bad that it was not one but like two whole steps down. So like where the C was, it was actually an A. Like
That's
it
crazy.
was really really bad. And I said, I honestly recommend if like me coming back in like 3 4 months because it's
Yeah.
so bad. And if they get that old, strings get really really brittle, and you'll break them when you stretch them too far. Because when you are tuning, you're tuning, say they're flat, you're tuning them, you're stretching them, and they'll break if you stretch them too far.
Okay.
And so you have to restring them.
Have
But
you ever broken any or come close to
I have broken one string with like in all of my, I guess, tuning career so far. And when I do break a string, I say, your piano hasn't been tuned in a long time. This does need repaired. It's not going to cost a lot of money. And then I refer them to my mentor. But this summer, I'd actually like to learn a little bit more about the repair process. I knew that I wasn't going to cover it all for my senior project with
Right.
repair and tuning. I kind of just did tuning. But right now, I'm just focusing on tuning. But in the summer, I'd love to learn the repair process. So
Well, and do you think this could be something that you could pursue as a full-time career, or is it more of just like a side hustle to you?
it's definitely a side hustle. I I guess my name kind of got out. I kind of have been exploring like social media. I've kind of made a business account on social media, Instagram and Facebook, and my name kind of got out there. I've had a guy out of Riverton who owns a piano tuning business, and he's, I guess, pretty big. He does pretty well. He called me and kind of said, there's a piano tuner shortage in Wyoming. And he kind of was, I told him right off the bat, like, I don't want to do this as a main career. I have,
Yeah.
bigger dreams, but I love to do this just as a side thing, but not like my main job. And he kind of wasn't really understanding that really well. And we had an hour-long conversation. I mean, it wasn't really a conversation. He kind of just told me a bunch of things. He was super helpful, but I think it kind of came off a little bit condescending. But I am super thankful for all the things that he definitely told me. But yeah.
And so, why is it that you wouldn't want to go into this as a full time career? Are there obstacles in your way, or it's just not one of your greatest passions?
Um, I would say, I don't know, I have bigger dreams. I have bigger plans first. I didn't really expect this to even be a business to begin with. I kind of expected it to just be, my senior project. I ended up making $3,000 off of it, and that was really great for me. But I still am looking at um, my original plans. Um, yeah.
This is kind of off topic and what we were talking about before, but it
Mm-hmm.
popped in my head. With the software, is there better and better software coming out every year, or has it kind
Yes.
of reached its peak?
Definitely. So when I was on call with the guy out of Riverton, he was telling me all about the new software, and he was asking me what I was using then at the time, and I told him, and he said, there's so many different apps, different software that you can use, and obviously they all cost different amounts of money. So the super precise, accurate ones are going to be so much money. The one that he has is $1,000 for the down payment, and then he
Oh, wow.
has a yearly subscription, obviously, and then a yearly payment. So I'm not, um, I guess I don't love it that much for it to be that accurate,
Right.
but I do have one that costs a little bit of money, yes. And so, but yeah, the more precise um, the tuning is, the more money it's going to cost.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I know we've talked about this a little bit before, but you said there's like an association or a guild of piano tuners, right, that you could
yes.
join. So you want to just tell us a bit about that, what that's all
So
about?
I've been thinking about, I guess, joining it, but I think it's more of a thing where I'd have to have a lot of time. It's not just tuning, it's also the repair. I've
Okay.
looked into it, and there's so many hours that you have to spend on it. You kind of have to have a mentor and have it be taught. It would definitely be somebody's main focus for something that they wanted to do like permanently.
Okay.
um, I remember looking into it and having it say that you have to take a whole piano apart, like the whole thing, strings and everything, pegs, every piece apart, and then put the whole thing back together,
Oh, wow.
which was like way out of my league right now. But I'd love to do that in the future and have that, under my business name of a member of the Piano Technicians Guild. It'd be awesome, but definitely not right now.
Yeah.
So
Are there like any benefits to being in that, or is it just a credentials thing?
it's kind of just a credentials thing. Not a lot of people really know what being a part of the Technicians Guild really is.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, because it's not super out there, but I think that if I had it, it'd probably make me more reliable, more, I guess, somebody's first choice.
Okay.
So,
And I guess just kind of as we're coming to a close, my final question would be, and I know you're not necessarily going into this as a career, but since you've been in it a little bit, what advice do you have for people looking to go into that? And what are some things you wish you would have known when you started?
so I guess if you're looking to go into it, I'd say like it's for, you could even go, okay. You could go into it as a side hustle, or you could go into it as like something that you would want to do, I guess, permanently. There's obviously a shortage in Wyoming, especially in this area. They're really hard to come by, but it's not a super hard thing to learn. It does take dedication, it does take practice, and obviously the passion. But if you want to do it, I honestly say go for it. It's not, I just learned from a mentor. There's YouTube videos out there that you could learn. The tools are super inexpensive. You only start with really nothing and then kind of build your way up. But if you want to do it, I definitely say go for it. And, you know, do a lot of practice before you start charging people. And I would say, warn people, I'm not a member of the Technicians Guild. There is a chance that I break your string. I'm only a tuner, so I'm not able to repair this. So if I do break a string, just things like that.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us and spending your time with us. And thanks everybody for tuning in.